Hello. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Yeah, also good. Um, work's been a little bit slow still, but that's okay. And the rest of life is good. I was sick last week and much better this week.
Good. Isn't that always like when you're sick, you're like, I will totally be grateful for all the healthy, well days that I have.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And school's
So,
back up too, so that's good.
yep. I've got one more that starts on Monday, and then all of them will be have a place to go, and I will feel much more settled than I do right now. But it's good.
Right.
Um, So you mentioned that things were slow. Do you feel like do you see your business as in two different places, like the body work and then the coaching? Or do you
Yeah,
see it kind of all as one? And the reason I ask is because I'm wondering if one side is like slower than the other.
yeah. No, it's just slow in general and both, but I know massage will pick up, and I have a lot of people calling that I need to get on the book. And I've been redoing my website and kind of redirecting my focus with coaching. So that's more towards helping men with relationship. So just be starting to like advertise and speak more clearly to that and invite guys to come and work with me. So yeah, yeah.
Did you have something pressing you wanted to discuss today?
Um, Not really. I was going to ask you what you wanted to talk about. I really liked our discussion last time, and yeah, I think talking more about men and women and healing, you know, mental, emotional healing, sounds great. But what part of all that, I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I had the thought this morning as I was kind of mentally preparing for a conversation. You had made a post recently about relationships and men
yeah,
and
yeah,
about the lone wolf being not the path.
yeah.
And I have my own like woman version of that, and I thought it might be interesting to discuss that a little further.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
Um, you know, I track a lot of like women centered things, both like reproductive rights, but also like just what is going on with women and what's kind of trending and what's not trending and what's like coming in and out of popularity or whatever. And I have a friend right now going through like a really terrible situation. And I was at her house recently, just consoling her, being with her through the process. And this interesting thing came up where more women are having babies without men.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's the women's version of the lone wolf, and I'd invite you to speak a little bit on the lone wolf option or like the
Yeah.
path or whatever, but we could kind of interweave how men and women are making these choices and what that's gonna what I am interested in is how that choice kind of reverberates through history and reverberates to the future too.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good discussion point. And I'm glad we're kind of getting into this topic here too, because I ran my men's group meeting last night, and that did come up. Actually, the post came up, and I had another man he had been married for um, maybe 13 or 15, no, 10 years or something, between 10 and 15 years. And it's got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and has been divorced now for 3 years, and is just very happy being single and feels like he's doing good work on his own being single. And I think he misinterpreted my post a little bit. Um, but also I think I could have been more clear in it. Um, but it all to say, like, it came up, and yeah, I want to talk about it more. So yeah, it's cool to hear like your recognition of like females kind of engaging in the same thing in their own way or a similar thing. And it'll be good to like talk about what we're seeing as like maybe similarities or differences between, in the genders there. Um,
Hmm.
you know, um, kind of engagement in individuality or independence or whatever. Um, yeah, as far as like consequences for the future and now and what things have been like in the past, I think now is a much more interesting time than people realize. Um, I think that in the past there were like when I say past, I don't mean 1960, I mean like 1860. You know, in the past, like now is a very unique period in time where in America at least women have a lot of rights and have a lot of control and autonomy over themselves. And before that was not the case, right? So in the past, men, there were bachelors, but it was like the culturally accepted, and like that this was the pathway. You find a wife and you get married, and she kind of belongs to you in a certain sense of the word. And like it's just something men did, was get a wife. Whether there was love or not was kind of inconsequential. It was, you got a wife because you were going to have children, right? And you, that was like part of your qualification as a man, like having a wife, in society, right? And so it's not the what relationships were like in the past, what they what their purpose was and how people were in them was very different, you know. I think probably in a high percentage of cases, women did not want to be married to the men that they were with, or were extremely unhappy with what was going on because they didn't have control or choice over their lives, right? And now here we are in this space, um, where things are very different. And so yeah, maybe there were men who lived alone or were bachelors back then. It was probably a much lower percentage. And whether the people who were in relationship, whether they were happy or not, was like not not a factor, was not important. It was just something that you did, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and so here we are where there's more equal rights, and people are getting married for different reasons, for love and for happiness, rather than just status quo and procreation. Um, and it's also much more acceptable to be single or divorced these days, way more acceptable, and to have children out of marriage, right? Very acceptable and normalized now, right? So it's a legitimate option just to be single and be living your life, right? And so what are the consequences of that going forward, of people, of like men choosing to be single or women choosing to be single? I feel like we're in the throes of redefining and getting acclimated to a different type of relationships, right? Different type of engagement in relationship, a different standard for relationship. Um, and at the same time, in that kind of adjustment period, there's these different pathways, and there is a mindset that's beginning to become quite prevalent of like, um, relationships are too difficult, and they're not worth it, and like it's not worth the effort, and casual sex is fun and exciting, and I'm just trying to get my needs met, right? Like the relationships are, they don't work, marriages don't work, 57% of people get divorced, so why try to do that, right? So I think there's like sowing the seeds for future generations to also not have not have good examples of like healthy relationships in front of them, not seeing those, and then future generations simply not learning the tools of how to have a good relationship.
Mhm.
So there's going to be, I'm going to see, I feel like we'll see a certain percentage of the future population that isn't interested in a relationship and feels fine without it. And then also they don't have the skill set to create a good one. Uh,
Mhm.
and that, I mean, scientists are very clear already. It's mostly economic, but are really clear about the reality of population decline amongst, the developed world. Uh,
Mhm.
so I think those relationship trends probably play a factor in that too. Uh,
Mhm.
and does any of that make people happier? I don't know. I think that's subjective. Maybe yes, maybe no. I think some cases people are going to be happy to just have the autonomy, and in other cases they're not going to be happy because they want to have a relationship, but they don't know how, and they don't have the skill set, and they don't know that it's a good idea or can work out. So
Mhm.
yeah. What do you think?
Well, gosh, you said so many things in there that could be expanded upon, but I think that it's important to remember in any of these conversations, but especially in this one, that there are always going to be people, even like you said in the 1860s or whatever, that were fringe, that lived on the edge of what was normal. And that's still the case today, right? There's always going to be people who don't follow the norm, and that's great. We actually need that. And I think that we've been in my home, we've been exploring what's been called it was like a 5 series talk with Stephen Jenkinson and Kimberly Johnson called The Forgotten Pillars, which is about matrimony, patrimony, ceremony, and kinship. And it's deep. Like it's really the depth is so there. But a lot of it is about where does marriage come from? Why did we do it in the past, and why are we doing it now, or why are we not doing it now? um so it's really given us like a rich place to have lots of conversations about whether or not we want to engage in what is called matrimony, which we most people don't even know what that is, right? It's like they think the one place we hear it is like on a wedding invitation, like we invite you to the holy matrimony of these two people or whatever. And like the true understanding of matrimony is not that. It's not like a wedding, right? Like that's the event, but matrimony is everything kind of before and after. um that being said, I think that there's these trends that are happening where like more and more people are saying, well, what's the point whenever women can now be more autonomous, women can support themselves. We don't What do we need this wedding thing for? Why does the legal piece have to meddle into our marriage and stuff like that? And there's an Instagram account that I follow called Marriage is Happening. If you don't follow them, check them out, because the husband in that, he really shares a lot of things about what it's like for men, and I think that that's super interesting. But one of the things that the wife talks about a lot is that there's different kinds of love that you receive on the other end of a wedding or a marriage. And a lot of times, like, kind of the current idea is that there's romantic love that you receive when you go into a union with someone, right? And one thing that she says, which is like the first person I've really heard talk about this in this way, is she says, what I expected was community love. So I went into my marriage thinking that my community was expanding. And we forget about that a lot. We forget about how, like, we hear these stories of like what you were saying is like the man then owned the woman, or like there was this property kind of experience, or like that was also the status thing for men, like I got me a wife. And the same thing for the woman too. Like, I got me a husband. um, and we forget that like when two families join, the idea is that the community that you are a part of now expands, right? Like the mother-in-laws, they become friends or whatever, or they become enemies sometimes, I guess. But it's like we have forgotten that really important piece of how like coming together as a couple, we actually strive for what can we do as two people together versus on my own, like strength in numbers, or like we have this certain like it's easy for me to be like I have these values and goals in my life as an individual. It's a lot more challenging to sit with my partner and be like, these are my goals, those are your goals, and together we have these like separate but similar goals, right? So we it's like we can move forward in some ways as like more of a couple sometimes. And we've so one of the basis of the forgotten pillars talk that we've been diving into is remember in the wedding, whenever the officiant says, okay, now turn to your people now as you are man and wife of whatever. That's like in the wedding, right? It's a pretty typical thing that you see. And I think about that as like, okay, as we turn back out into the community, what are we choosing to create within our community? And how does that play into like one, helping my neighbor, or two, like letting my children see what a healthy relationship, how we intermingle within our relationship, how we become each other's tension that holds each other together. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
It's like there's so much healing that can happen when you're in relationship, which like side note, there's a whole meme thing of like don't be like don't let your woman be your therapeutic space or whatever. It's said more eloquently than what I just said, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. And I would also say that there are certain pieces of healing that can only happen within a relationship that is stable, strong, curious, loving, and open to that. So it's like that meme is right, but like with context, it's different. So yeah, I just think, and we've talked about this before, like how there are, like you can get a lot of healing work done in therapeutic one-on-one sessions, but then there are some certain things that really get healed more in a group session. And so it's like we need all of that. We need all of that. And I feel like that's where men doing men's work, women doing women's work, coming together to the relationship to say, okay, I'm here with you. Like, I'm committed to this. I'm committed to being in this relationship with you is really, it's potent. There's like, that's like a different level of like awesome healing, doing good work as humans in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I get a little concerned whenever I start to hear people, and I'm saying this as a non-married person, right? Like I've been divorced and I'm currently non-married, but also contemplating how do we make matrimony work? How do we make a wedding happen? How do we make marriage not fall into like what's currently trending, but also not going back to 1860 either? So I think, yeah, I think that's really, I get a little concerned whenever I hear people just totally disregard marriage as like a thing of the past. What do we need that for? I'm committed to this.
Right.
You're committed to this. We don't need the legal system in there. And while like I understand those sentiments, but we're really lacking the depth of what marriage can provide to ourselves, to each
Yeah.
other, to our families, and to our communities.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I'm not married. I'm never been married, but I am interested in it. And I think, like you were talking about, there's several things that are lost. And I also want to say that you don't have to be married to have a fulfilling, committed partnership
Yeah,
and you really good healing work together. You don't have to at all. Because
absolutely.
what marriage is, it's words, right? It's words and it's an intention. It's a declaration and a ritualization of an intention, right? To build it into a ceremony. But what it is it's words and intention. And you can still have those same intentions of being together and loving one another and staying by each other's side and helping each other and growing through your relationship. I think um, what marriage can do in particular is there's I think, a very strong sense of concreteness in a marriage. Like, yes, I'm committed and I'm not afraid to say that in a very big way and also in a legal way, right? And I think there's a lot that comes with that commitment. And it comes not just on the basis of like what's happening in the relationship and what that does for the relationship, but also for yourself as an individual, right? It's a commitment to your partner and to this thing, but also like it's a big promise that you are making, and it's maybe a test of your word and of your intention. And like, I mean, just think about like commitment in by committing in marriage like that. I think it's just strengthens, or it can strengthen an individual in like their decisions and their engagement and involvement in their life, right? Because it's basically making a very clear decision. I want this and I am going to do this, right? To the best of my ability, right? And that's a very strong position to take, right? And I believe that it's the best things in life come through commitment, right? And I'm not just saying commitment to a partner. I mean, commitment to a job, commitment to a place, commitment to, building or learning something, like to get anywhere, to have any sort of growth or movement or whatever, you have to say, I'm going to do this, right? Every day or this many days a week, I'm going to study this. I'm going to practice piano, right? I'm going to build this thing, my whatever my craft is. I'm going to create this. Like, if you don't, if you say, oh, I'll practice piano this week and then maybe 3 weeks from now and next month and whatever, like not committing, you're never going to make progress into having a stronger ability or understanding in piano or whatever the hell it is, right? So, like, commitment is required for growth, for learning, for all those things, for development. You have to say, this, make a decision. This is what I want, and I'm going to fucking stick with it because there's something of value in this for me, or there's something of value in it for the collective, and that I'm dedicated to that. Right. So it's a really powerful thing to say that. And I think doing that in a marriage also brings that energy forth from you, inside of you, right? For all the other areas and arenas of your life, right? Because if you are making commitment somewhere, you're more able to make it other places too.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
that's there's something lost there when we're not committing to each other in the same way. We're I mean, look at us millennials, look at this generation. It's characterized by like feeling a lack of purpose, feeling a lack of like direction even. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that I think part of that, part of all of that is not knowing what to commit to and like reality feeling really uncertain. Uh,
Hmm.
and reality is inherently uncertain. It's not just the time that we live in, it's inherently uncertain, but it has felt particularly uncertain or there's been like parts missing or certain things missing from the upbringing of these newer generations that make commitment hard. And society is built in such a way today that you're not required to commit to anything. You can get by not committing to anything. Um, and I think that's really to our detriment. And it seems like the younger generations are scared of commitment because they see a loss of something, a loss of freedom, right? Like if you commit to one thing, you're essentially saying, I'm not going to have all those other options, right? FOMO, fear of missing out, right?
Mhm.
I, if I like, that's fucking real for so many young people, right? There's so
Mhm.
many things, there's so many options out there for us today that didn't exist before as men and women. And by choosing one thing, by choosing one degree, one job, one person, one place to live, digital nomad is all the rage, like I could live everywhere and anywhere, right? But you're losing, we're thinking of like all these options what are losing, but by not committing, you never get any one thing fully, right?
Mhm.
You get a little taste. It's you get one piece of cheese and a little slice of salami, right? And a bit of pickle on a toothpick, but you're not getting a fucking meal, right? You get to dabble, but you're not ever satisfied because you're not going deep enough to actually get the fruit of what is there. So there's, I think, a great loss there. And we should be more afraid of that loss than the loss of all these other options. It's just
Mhm.
something that's kind of a blind spot, I think, for so many people.
Yeah, I think we could take that conversation and go in a lot of different directions, but something that I'm thinking about is decision fatigue is real. Like, I remember whenever I was younger, there was like two kinds of bread, and now there's like 20 kinds of bread. And I
Yeah,
don't want 20 kinds of bread. I want two kinds of bread because it's easier.
right.
But we have this misnomer that like the more choices, the better off we are. And I don't know, for me, I'm like, no thanks. I just like keep it simple. Um, and I think the commitment thing is so interesting to me too, because yeah, like, not too long ago, part of um a normal culture was like you had one job for like 30
Yeah,
years or
right.
something.
Right.
And now it's very common for people to switch jobs, switch careers, switch places like a lot more. And I don't know if that's good or bad or whatever, or something in between that. But um, I think that it's worth contemplating. And the other thing I was going to say that you were mentioning is like, there's something in here about depth, right? There's something in here about how like there are certain people who really dive deep. Like I would say that you and I are both people who really are curious about like the depth of life. Um and bringing more depth to life. I definitely am a very existential person who thinks like what's the point of all of this? Why are we here? I have a kiddo like that, which is really interesting. And yet I don't always see that in like all the people I meet. And so there's either my curiosity is like, do they not think about that? Do they not think that more depth could be added to their life? Or is it like too hard to think about more depth to their life? Because when you talk about commitment, that's really deep to think like committing to like a job, committing to eating healthier, running, exercise, whatever. It's like, yeah, you're right, the commitment piece is like really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think like, yeah, decision fatigue. And um, I think part of all that too is like not thinking about going deep or that as an option or something that's interesting or valuable. I don't think is a fault or a flaw that's inherent in the younger generations and our generation, stuff like that. I think it's actually a byproduct of like trauma, if we want to say that. Like if your nervous system is all fucked up and or if you felt neglected or you were abused or something like that, it can be really hard to your system is geared towards your system has learned how to survive in a particular way. And that way is I'm going to meet my immediate need right now. And and um, I feel bad. I don't feel safe. So I'm going to do whatever I need to do right now to feel good and feel safe. Right. So it's this coping strategy. Right. And it's like, I can't even think about investing 15 years into something to get the richness of the depth in the fruit that's far down the road there. I need to get something now because I'm not okay. And when your nervous system is negatively affected by trauma like that, you it's uh yeah, the survival mechanism. And then what was it? Oh yeah, you don't have a tolerance for discomfort, right? You don't have a tolerance for for um for pain or for like mundacity, right? Your nervous system is wired for this fast action, short burst, and like you maybe feel like you're already in pain, things are already difficult. So wading through more difficult, uncomfortable, boring stuff is pointless, right? So we're not even going to try it for depth. We're just going to and you know the post-capitalist market economy has totally hijacked that whole thing. And with the rise of the internet and Amazon, it's just now, 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 now. You don't think about building something 15 years in the future. You can just try and get something now. You can get, you know, just get some sort of fulfillment now, and it could be really good. And if it's not good enough, you can get some other little hit of fulfillment later, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
the
people,
dopamine of
yeah,
the likes and the comments and all that.
right, right. It's like our brains have been wired to seek that kind of immediate fulfillment. And
Mhm,
there's just you can't even see or understand because you've never experienced what long-term investment and commitment brings. You don't know what kind of fulfillment, what is there in the depths of commitment and deep time investment. You have
mhm,
no idea. You know, the older
mhm,
generations do. They do. They know what's there. And some of them, like maybe you don't see them very often, but some of them like really understand what that deep happiness is of commitment and staying in one place and doing one thing and what they've learned from that and how it's given them strength. You know,
mhm,
they are very aware of what that's like.
mhm,
And that was part of their cultural paradigm, but that's
mhm.
not the cultural paradigm that the young people grow up in now.
Well, and when you were talking about commitment earlier, it also made me think like rites of passage have really become like part of the past, you know? As I have a kiddo, a boy kiddo going 10 years old, like we're talking about how to create a rite of passage for him into more manhood. And I think that commitment piece from our elders showing us showing us that way, and I try to really be careful of not to glamorize the past because obviously the past has a lot of issues too. But I do feel like we can glean a lot of insight into how to help ourselves through the past of what worked and then how to like transform it to fit our current time. But we're not really valuing, there's not a lot of people who value that also. But I also think um yeah, the rite of passage, even in like celebrating the ending of college and the beginning of a job, and like we've missed a lot of celebrations. Like, when was the last time you heard someone celebrate? I bought a new house, and they had a housewarming party.
Yeah.
Like I don't see that very much anymore, and um, that is kind of a rite of passage that would kind of
Yeah.
celebrate and like sort of grip into staying put in that house possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think rites of passage and the celebration of milestones has also really kind of gone by the wayside along with the long-term commitment. Like those are, I feel like they're tied together.
Yeah.
Uh, way they're part of the same set, you know.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's a lot lost there too. That makes me that makes me kind of circle back to what you were talking about of like community, and kind of marriage and the building and broadening of community and how that used to be a thing and how it it kind of still is a thing, but with people, less people getting married and more divorces happening and whatnot, like there's that breakdown too. And like, because that's what all those milestones, those are communal events, you know. It's a celebrating and supporting and, showing care and love for, some people within our community for the successful passage of that milestone. And um I would say the 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 decrease in marriage, the decrease in like people committing to each other, and the difficulties with young people dating and having and keeping relationships, um that's all, it's I'm more inclined to say that that is actually a byproduct. All of that is a byproduct, um, of the breakdown of community through our hyper individualistic culture. Um, I wouldn't say that marriage or the lack of commitment is driving hyper individualistic culture. I think individualistic culture is inherent to America, and that what we're seeing here with uh, hookup culture and people just dating here and there and not being able to keep long-term relationships and not knowing how to date or talk to each other. That is just the latest symptom in the hyper individualistic culture that has been unconsciously cultivated here in America.
Mhm.
It's part of it. And yeah, yeah,
I'm loving that more and more people are having the conversation about hyper individualism, because I agree 100% with you that that's driving so much of the breakdown in culture at large. But when I was in college, I spent a whole semester studying independent versus dependent cultures. And I feel like that was one of the most like defining courses that I took. But, so I spent a whole semester like dissecting the good and the bad, and like how being on the extreme versions of these things can be really dangerous. And it's like that was, we were studying that 15, 20 years ago, and now it's like here in our face a
yeah,
little bit more than it was back then. But I feel like that really set a tone for me through the last 15, 20 years, however long it was, um, to really see the detriment to living on the extremes of either one of those. So yeah, I agree with you that the hyper individualism in this country specifically is a place that could really, we could just really start to dive in there and unravel that a bit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely. It If we look at society and American culture, there's a lot of things that are broken and messed up or are dysfunctional. And that hyper individualism is a part of that. And it is a major factor, along with other things. And I see where we're at right now as this inflection point. Like things things break down until everyone realizes that things are completely broken, and then there's a renewal period, right?
Mhm.
I feel like we're collectively reaching this point of like, things are completely broken. Let's fix them, right? That is where we're going, right? Things break down, and then people are like, this sucks. Things are broken, things are fucked. It does not feel good or happy or organized or orderly at all. we have a high inherent motivation to fix them and to change them and go back and basically to revert to the opposite or bring more of the opposing or disparate energy back into play, right? So we're going on this extreme to um online dating where you're just literally swiping for hours. They're not pretty enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not pretty enough. They're not tall enough. Whatever the fuck it is. Um, and everyone's just like, yeah, I'll just be single and I'll just, go out to eat with friends and keep drinking, keep smoking, and just enjoy my life as a single person and seek fulfillment as an individual. And that's going to keep going. And people like think about the generation below us, like they grew up just literally texting each other at parties rather than talking face to face, right? So they're gonna face, I feel like if that trend continues, it's gonna get to this point where like, oh, this sucks. This is really bad. I don't like this. How do we actually get closer to each other? Let's actually get really close to each other. Let's have a real community. We all live in these suburbs or pockets of the city, and nobody fucking knows their neighbor. If you
Yeah.
if you if someone just like appeared in front of my face from 200 years ago, and they'd be like, ah, yes, all these houses, and what do you guys do, and what kinds of things are you engaged in? And you're like, oh, I don't know anybody here. Like, what do you mean you don't know anybody? You live here. Don't you talk? Don't you have parties? Don't you gather and stuff like that? It's like, no, we don't do that. Like, that's insane. If you
It
plop
is.
pretty much anybody from any other time in human history, plop them right now into your suburban fucking life and tell them you don't talk to anyone that lives around, you can see 10 houses from where you're at to tell
Hmm.
that from any time on planet Earth that you don't know them and you don't talk to them or do anything with them, they'd be like, "What? What do you
Hmm.
mean? How are you living? What's going on?" They would be just like, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it really speaks to our nervous system and like what our bodies, our physiology needs, right? Because I was thinking about this with the celebration of the housewarming. Today, it's like I'm going to post something on Facebook and get all these expressions that are like, congratulations, so happy for you. But there is a different experience when someone comes into your home
Yeah,
and celebrates with you. I saw this a couple months ago and this really struck me, but a friend of mine was going out to dinner with another, like, her and her husband were going out to dinner with another couple to celebrate the other couple's anniversary. And I was like, "Oh my God, that is so gorgeous," because we don't do that anymore. It's again, I mean, my friend just celebrated an anniversary, a different friend, a couple months ago, and she just posted on Facebook. Everyone's like, "Happy anniversary!" Da, 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 da. But like, where's the celebration? Where's the gathering together to celebrate? You made it 10 years, 11 years, whatever. And it's not to like poo poo or like other the people who are not married or not, are not celebrating anniversaries, but instead it's to bring together our nervous systems in the same space to gather to celebrate something. And it's just right on point with what you're saying about the neighbors, and how, you know, also I would say like life was a lot slower, even like 20 years ago, to
yeah,
where, sitting on your porch and talking to your neighbor because they were sitting on their porch was like a really normal occurrence. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to come home from work, maybe get back on my laptop and work some more, or maybe just veg out in front of the TV because I can't anymore.
right. Yeah,
And it's like, as a massage therapist, I hear people, one of the things I hear people talk about their stress a lot is like their coworkers and like who they work with. So now your nervous system is in the same space, like what, 8, 9 hours a day with people who you kind of hate or don't like very much. And then you go home and you zone out on the TV, which is adaptive, and I totally get it. But where are we getting the nervous system response of being in community, in gathering with people that we actually enjoy? Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
really important.
yeah. It is. It is really important, and I feel like what you just spoke to there of like Yes, I think our current work culture and how our economic system is set up, that the constant need for work and money and the rising costs, that like think of a person and you just have this bubble of energy, right? If so much energy is going into work and making money, you don't have energy left for socialization,
Yeah.
right? And so that is a major factor in it. And
Mm.
I think the other thing too is that people are actually scared of each other and they don't know it,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
they don't want to recognize that, right? Like it feels like so many times when, let's say, you encounter a neighbor or even an acquaintance that you would call friend or friendly, right? It feels scary and it feels like a labor, right? How what like I need to do and say things to interact with this person and have an okay outcome. Like I want to feel comfortable when I'm talking to this person, and I want, and also there's like so much at play there of like I want to feel confident in myself, or I want to feel okay, or like that I love and care about myself, right? And if I'm talking to this other person, I could be confronted with my shortcomings, right? Like, oh, they are doing this in their life. They accomplished this, or they've achieved this milestone, or have this much money, right? You could be confronted with all the things that you are not, right? And you could be also be confronted with someone else's need, right? Here we just talked about our battery, our energy being used up with work, right? It's not safe to interact with another person all the time because it's like, what are they going to say? What are they going to need? One, we're so polarized. It might be like this person could be really angry or have some really weird beliefs. And that feels weird to listen to. Like I feel uncomfortable engaging with this person and listening to that. I don't want to listen to that, right? So it's a labor. It's costing you energy to have an interaction because you might not know what the fuck kind of energy they're bringing in. So you're like, I'll just gonna avoid it altogether. No relationship, no engagement. We're not going to have a community of neighbors. I simply cannot handle whatever energy you're projecting and bringing into a space with me. My nervous system simply cannot handle it. I need to go
Hmm.
sit on the couch for 2 hours, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so it doesn't feel safe, right? It may
Yeah.
not be, it's not that they're like going to attack you physically or verbally, but it's not safe in the fact that I'm not able to feel settled and comfortable inside of my body right now. And
Hmm.
that is what I need.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the window of tolerance. We
Right.
can't, like, not only tolerance in like tolerating different opinions or viewpoints or whatever, but it's also the window of tolerance and the capacity of what you can actually handle or not. Um, there's so many ways to like increase capacity, increase that window of tolerance if you're willing to do that effort, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's all right in there, isn't it? It's like
It's
I totally get what you're saying about the labor that it is to talk with somebody. But I also feel like this comes back full circle in what you were saying is like right now we're seeing this like rising up of the like it's an what was the word you used? The crest of it or something. It's like yeah, where it's everything's coming up in order to figure out what needs to break in order for us to fix it.
yeah. One other thing I was saying in there was like, or that I wanted to say in there was like it being a labor sometimes to engage with people because we could have so much difficult shit going on inside of our life, and it doesn't feel like safe or right or good to share all that with the person that you're engaging. So we're not being authentic with people. We're kind of hiding ourselves and what's real for us in our lives behind this veneer of, hello, I'm good. I need to present like a calm, okay, acceptable image here, right? So it takes effort for you to hold back all the crap that you've got going on inside of your
Yeah.
life from this
Yeah.
interaction. You're literally having a wall of, I'm not going to share that. I can't share that. It's not safe to tell this person about that. So I'm not going to. And they're probably in the same position. Like
Mhm.
if they're having difficulty in their relationship, maybe their work is unstable, maybe their money is unstable. And to share all that and be real, when someone asks, "How are you?" and you say, "I feel scared that I'm not going to make my bills this month," or "I'm really fucking triggered by my kid right now, and I don't know what to do about him. They're in this new phase, and I have no fucking clue how to handle it." To say those things, like to be vulnerable with each other, just feels like not. It doesn't feel okay. So you're hiding yourself all the time, right?
Mhm.
And how long can we do that? And on a collective level, right? How
Mhm.
long can we just continue to lie to each other about what is happening in life, right?
Mhm.
And like how long are we willing to feel the shittiness of that? And it's going to take effort to create a novel experience where you are authentic with people who aren't your inner circle, for you to realize that it's okay to share those things, and it might actually be better to share those things.
Mhm.
You're going to bring the other individual will probably bring some empathy to the table.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and you're right. I think it is ripe for a revival, a change, a shift.
Yeah. I agree. It's coming, and I think that conversations like ours and like connections with people are, like investing in the connections that do feel good and safe and comfortable is a good way to start.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And I get it. Like not talking to certain family members or certain friends anymore. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, honestly. Like in some cases, that's the very smartest and most appropriate thing to do if this other individual is legitimately unsafe or doesn't give a shit, right? Or
Mhm.
is so sick internally, drinking, smoking, avoidance, all that shit. Like if they're so or just ignorant, right? Like it's not safe for you to try to develop a relationship through vulnerability with these individuals, so you don't. Does that look like the breakdown of relationship in society? Yes. But is it the right thing to do in those cases? Yes. And it just takes a lot more effort on a collective level to shift that to where you can be more vulnerable with people, or it takes more work in your own life to cultivate, relationships and a community where you do feel safe around 80% of the people that you're
Mhm.
around. you know?
Yeah, there's certain people that are no contact for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then there are certain people that are no contact until I can gather the capacity to deal with whatever it is that's over
right,
there.
right. Or
And then
you
there's certain people that are like, bring it on in, everybody here, you
have,
know?
right, right. Yeah. And like I think we just need a lot more leadership.
Hmm.
We need a lot more people willing to stand up and be leaders and to carry the energy into the shift, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's happening. It's hard to see every day, but I think it is happening where people are wanting to be more vulnerable, who want to share more, want to connect more. And there's a lot of people out there that are getting healthy psychologically and emotionally and are becoming more understanding and more respectful of one another. Um, yeah, but we need a lot of strong leaders to show up to help shift culture here. It's going to break down further. And I think what's cool about the nature of our reality is that the the breakdown like causes the leadership to show up, right?
Mhm.
The resources, the things that are needed begin to appear. That's what evolution is. It's like it's a response from organism to the environment. So if
Mhm.
our environment is like breakdown of relationship and community, that will get to a certain point where the human organism as a collective says, "Oh, we need to change," and certain people are going to show up to lead that change.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. This was
Mm.
good.
Yeah. I want to schedule our next one soon because I want to talk more.
Yeah, we will.
Um,
We
so what,
also need to we also need to go back to the podcast with Allison Armstrong and do an episode on that.
okay.
And Yeah, this is the depth, right? Like this is the juice of what's happening out there in the world
Yeah.
that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. I mean, there surely is people talk, there surely are people talking about it, but this is where the effort is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Mm.
Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day and we'll talk again really soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it. I hope you do too.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.